Hello, I'm Kristen Coverly, ABMP's Director of Professional Education, and welcome to Lymph Talk, a series of conversations I'm having with practitioners who specialize in the manual lymphatic drainage, or MLD modality. These conversations are in conjunction with the free online ABMP CE Summit on Lymph on Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. And my hope is that they increase awareness of MLD and demonstrate how effective it can be with different populations. This Lymph Talk conversation is a little different than the others. I'm talking today with Lola Michelin, the founder of the Northwest School of Animal Massage. She has experience in the veterinarian and zoological fields and has practiced animal massage for over 30 years and massage for people for 17 of those years. Welcome, Lola. I'm so excited to have you with us today.
Thank you, Kristen. It's great to be back.
It's wonderful. And I'm so excited to talk lymph and animals with you. So let's dive right in. This is going to be so fun. So learners and viewers, the other Lymph Talk conversations focus on the lymphatic system and manual lymphatic drainage techniques for working with humans. And of course, we'll be talking with Lola today about the lymphatic system and techniques for working with animals. So Lola, let's start at the beginning. What are the similarities and differences between the two lymphatic systems, animals and humans?
Yeah, you bet. Well, functionally and structurally, we're really talking about the same thing. I mean, animals have the same structures that contribute to their lymph system, and the function is primarily the same. So it has the same filtration properties, the same immune function contributions, but there are some critical differences, of course. In animals, the thymus is critical in the younger years and developmental years, and it does become less and less of a contribution over time, similar to humans. The spleen, of course, is a big part of that, but in horses in particular, which a lot of my practice is with horses, it's quite a bit different because the spleen is massive in horses comparatively and stores such a large amount of blood to be available to the horse for speed and endurance that it has a very critical role in the survival of the horse. So the function of it is the same, but maybe the importance to the horse is a little different than it might be for other animals. So I think there's more in common than different, but the main thing I think about when I'm working on an animal versus a human, of course, when I first learned manual lymphatic drainage, it was when I had started my human practice, and it really changed the way I approached a lot of my animal work because now I had this new tool that I thought was so critical. And as a matter of fact, our school was the first animal specific school to teach manual lymphatic drainage as part of our rehabilitation program, because I felt it was such a great tool for animals because of the stresses that they come across in their environment. So I think that's the biggest difference, is taking into consideration why an animal might need lymphatic work versus why a human might. I think mostly about like horses. And of course, I work with a lot of zoo species as well. And the biggest challenge for them is the confinement. So the lack of ability to move freely over large parts of land. So that's different for a lot of horses that I work on, are show horses or race horses, and they spend 12 or more hours a day in a smaller space. And that small space might be a half acre. Right. Yeah. But more often it's like a 10 by 20 enclosure. And that's just not enough for a large land mammal to keep moving and keep their lymph moving. As you well know, muscle contraction and movement is a key part of that lymphatic flow. So that's one of the reasons I do MLD a lot for my horse clients and my zoo clients, is just to relieve the stagnation that comes from their lifestyle.
Absolutely. And I want to talk to you more in a moment about the impact of the work on the overall animal and their emotional and physical well-being. But first, let's talk a little bit more about the technique. So are the techniques used to work with the lymphatic system of animals similar to the MLD techniques used with humans, or where are some of the differences there?
Yes. Yeah. So there, you do need to have some flexibility in how the techniques are applied with animals. And, back in the day, of course, I studied with the Vader school,
Mhm.
and the technique was very specific. Do not deviate this many times for this long at this speed, right? And when I first started working with animals, I kept trying to be like really,
Mm.
stick to that program. But as I worked on more and more animals, I realized I have to have some flexibility. So I would say we try to stick as close to the technique as we can, but it might be my access to the animal. In my zoo work, I work with some large cats, and I may not be able to get to all the lymphocenters. So I have to make do with what I can. And sometimes I have to use tools that I wouldn't necessarily use in my human practice, but I might have to use brushes and or like target, what we call a target tool, which is basically a stick with a ball on the end, in order to get in and actually massage certain areas that I can't get hands-on contact. And then it's also about the animal's tolerance for the work, which is true for people too. But in many cases, if we have an animal who's restless or they are in pain because they're, dealing with a condition or an injury, then we might have to break it into several smaller sessions, which is challenging because we always want to start with the same steps, but we may not get as far as we would in a normal session. And so then we have to kind of decide, when do we come back? How far back do we go? Do we restart everything? And how far can we get? So I think that's the biggest difference. Since the system works the same way, we try to do the technique as close to the original design as possible.
But you're right, flexibility has to be the key word.
Yeah.
I'm sure in
Mhm.
any session with an animal, massage, manual lymphatic drainage, the combination, I'm
Yeah,
sure setting and the temperament that day, whatever's happening in the environment, all of those things impact that as well, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Their tolerance and also safety. We have some safety considerations. The nice thing with animals is we don't have a lot of like the draping considerations or some of the HIPAA considerations,
Right.
but we do have other considerations that might mean we don't have the same kind of environment or access, or we don't have control over creating the environment as much for the animals.
Yeah. I'm curious, Lola, how often do you incorporate manual lymphatic drainage techniques
Mhm.
into your animal massage sessions? Is it something you do in every session or once in a while? And then also, do you do that in combination with your hands-on techniques, or do just
Yeah.
one or the other? I'm so curious about all of it.
Yeah, thanks for asking that, because I do try. So most of my clients are biweekly or weekly, and if they are performance animals, so they're working in some capacity, and that could be anything from a racehorse to a service dog, right? Then I do try to at least once a quarter do a full MLD session, just kind of check in. But then I'm incorporating it as well anytime I know that animal might be encountering or has just encountered something stressful. Like if I know I'm taking my dog in to be spayed or neutered, I'm going to do an MLD treatment a few days prior to surgery to just kind of make sure that they're getting the best support from their immune system and clearing anything out that might interfere with their recovery or their outcome from the procedure. Prior to vaccinations, prior to transport. So a lot of my horses travel around the country, not my personal horses, but my clients. They travel all over, some by plane, some by trailer, but they're all exposed to things when they're traveling. So we do MLD prior to shipping or hauling. And then a lot of times I meet them at the show or the event and start their time there with a brief session. There are sessions where like at the end of a normal, whatever normal means, whatever body work I'm doing with the animal, I might end with just the first 2 steps of the MLD treatment to kind of give, that little bit of a siphoning effect and just charge the system a little bit. Even if I can't do the whole technique, I can at least give them that little boost at the end of a session.
Oh, that's great. Lola, please share a story about a time where you incorporated manual lymphatic drainage into your work with an animal, in a session with an animal, that really demonstrates the impact of the work on the whole being.
Yeah, sure. So actually, I was thinking about this prior, like, oh, there's so many cases, which one do I pick? So
I'm
I'm just going
sure.
to really quickly share two.
Great.
One was a horse that I had here at my retirement and rehab facility in Washington. And she was 34 years old, which is geriatric for a horse, quite geriatric. And she was a large horse. And she had lymphedema and congestive heart condition. So, a lot of massage was not available to her. Some techniques couldn't be done, but she got tremendous relief from the manual lymphatic drainage, especially when she was having an episode with the lymphedema. And with her, I combined the massage and the manual lymphatic drainage with kinesiology tape for circulation and lymphatic relief. And that has proven to be a tremendous tool in helping support the lymphatic system as well. So it's something I've incorporated into my practice a lot. And the other one is a more recent case. Just in recent weeks, I actually went to one of the zoos in our area to help their vet team with a Malaysian tapir. And a tapir is a kind of like a large cross between maybe a hippopotamus and an anteater.
That's a great description.
Yeah, they're beautiful animals. And this particular one has moved recently to this zoo and has had some problems with wounds that weren't healing on her feet and just kind of making the transition. And she had a baby and was recovering from that. And so they asked me to come in and take a look at her. And the first thing I noticed was just that she had tremendous stagnation in all four limbs. And so we did some very basic manual lymphatic drainage work with her. And I taught one of the keepers how to do just the first few steps and be able to just do some light compressions on the limbs that were affected. And the veterinarians were like amazed at how receptive she was to the work, but also at the impact of it almost immediately. So so that was a really positive thing to be involved with, and we'll continue working with her in the months ahead.
That's great. And I love too that you were able to teach the zookeepers a few techniques so that can happen on a more regular basis, that work can be given. That's great.
Yeah, it's a big part of the work we do with any of the animals is also giving the owners or the guardians of the animals tools to be able to do between visits, of course.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I could talk to you about this for hours, but we do need to end our Lymph Talk now. I want to thank you so much for being with us, Lola, and
Always
sharing that really great information about looking at animals and the lymph system and manual lymphatic drainage in a different way. That's great.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you today.
Oh, thanks. Learn more about Lola and her work at the Northwest School of Animal Massage at nwsam.com, and learn more about the free online ABMP CE Summit on Lymph at abmp.com/summit. Thanks for joining us.